say, okay, we're going to have a meeting and there's going to be such and such and such, so I show up and they're already there. Or it might be a staff meeting with department heads or directors, or if it's a community meeting, it's a time certain, that it will begin at 5 o'clock. Well, we start doing everything now. You're right. Someone walks in at 7 o'clock. They can say, well, now what?
Right.
We can't go.
And you're going to do it again?
Yeah.
So
So
hopefully this was the right. She's probably already recording. All right, so good evening, gentlemen. This is our open house conversation for getting community input, the county manager's recruiting opportunity for us. We have W.D. Higginbotham with Mercer Group, who is our senior management recruiter. W.D. has in the process of interviewing all of our commissioners and getting their wants and needs lists together so we can put together our marketing program. And this is another avenue that the commissioners asked us to pursue by inviting public input on the process as well. So we just want to have an informal conversation, whatever is on your mind, and we're here as long as you need us to be here to answer your questions or to take whatever input you've got for us on the county manager search. So if you guys, whoever wants to go first, introduce yourself and let's have the conversation. You were volunteered.
Can I sit, or do I?
No.
Hi, my name's Pete Fuscus, and I'm from Malabar. And I have an interest in professional management for Brevard County. And so I wanted to come down and share with you perhaps my experience. I have 12 years in the legislature up north, and I've been with a multinational company in the private sector with responsibilities for about 8 or 9 wholly owned subsidiaries in Central America, South America, Africa, and Asia. So I've had some private business experience, particularly in budgeting and planning and strategic plans. And I'm a member of the Budget Review Committee, and I have found that participation to be very, very interesting. A couple of years ago, we set forth some recommendations, and I think it follows with the search for a new county manager, and that is that if there is any weakness in county government, I see it in planning, in strategic planning, and operational planning. And I'm talking about 5 years out, rolled every year, which is what I had to do in my businesses that I managed overseas. I had a 5-year strategic plan, and it rolled over every year. And once you get it down on paper, it becomes much easier every succeeding year. So I think that your county manager should have, one, some private sector experience, and two, particularly in not the everyday, management, because we have some really great people with a couple of 100 years of experience who have been taking care of day-to-day business, and that so, the strategic planning and looking at the revenues, looking at priorities. The one thing that I think that your next county manager should have is a really good experience in prioritizing scarce resources. And I have some people in mind, but I'm not sure I want to voice that in a public forum. I'm a firm believer of promoting from within, also from the community. So.
yes, sir. First of all, I'm W.D. Higginbotham, and I just go by my initial W.D., and you mentioned Pete, so if you don't mind, I'll say Pete. Some of the things you mentioned are,
WD, you get on the record.
the things you mentioned, sir, are very generic in terms of what we're looking for any CEO, whether it's for Brevard County, the county manager, what he or she's going to have and what they're going to bring to the table. They're going to have to be very comfortable with fiscal matters, strategic planning. That's a given nowadays. A county this size with over $1 billion budget for the entire county and nearly $900 million that's going to fall under the responsibility of the county manager, the direction that he or she is going to receive from the county commission. 2,300 employees. If the county manager can't deal with, again, planning at least 5 years out, that he or she is not going to be successful in this particular position. The county is, you just can't operate essentially from day to day. Strategic planning is essential, and it's going to work the same way not only with your capital improvement program, but even your operating budget. While the county's only going to adopt a budget for 1 year, looking at in the future with the future years, you mentioned you were on the budget committee, I believe, and I'm not certain to what extent the county gets into looking at multi-year budgeting, but a good county manager is going to be looking perhaps not in terms of adopting a 5-year budget, but dealing with numbers that reach out beyond the current fiscal year. So those are things we'll be looking for when we do the advertising. I think Jerry mentioned I've met with 4 of the county commissioners so far. I'll meet with the last one next week. We started meeting actually, April the 5th was the first one, the second one was last week, and then 2 today, this evening with those of you that are here. And then I will finish speaking with the commissioners next week. Any input I get from you that needs to go in the job announcement and the advertising, and if not in that document itself, the advertising and the job announcement, what I need to do when I'm talking to the qualified candidates in terms of screening them, which I do one-on-one with the qualified candidates. I'll spend about an hour with them determining whether they're going to fit into what the county and this community is looking for. I will probably come forth with 8, 10, perhaps 12. The county wants at least 8 semifinalists. And the things I hear from you and from the county commissioners will not just go, like I said, in the job announcement, but will go in the individual one-on-one screening when I'm talking with them. I want to know what they're all about. I'm going to be listening to them, not talking like I am this evening. I have questions for them. I'm going to listen to them for at least an hour, and I'm going to know a lot about them, because you give someone an hour to talk to you, they're going to tell you an awful lot about themselves. And I need to know that because the county commission needs to know that.
will be doing the recruiting, so it's not like we're going to get this input and then pass it on to somebody else. So what he hears from you, he's taking with him into the...
Yeah, I handle this personally. Every resume that comes in, we'll get 80 to 100 resumes, and there's no magic to that number. I'm guessing we'll have 30, 40 that maybe meet the minimum qualifications. I will speak to 25 or 30 that well exceed the minimum qualifications, and from those we'll likely get our semifinalists.
Where are we going to advertise WD? So in case, like I said, Peter knows some people he might like to suggest. Check us out.
Just off the top of my head right now, what I'm thinking of will be, first of all, would be ICMA, which will be international advertising. The Florida League of Cities, Florida Association of Counties, we will probably do some minority advertising. National Association of Black Public Administrators will probably advertise there. I think I said the Florida League of Cities, the Florida Association of Counties, Florida City County Managers Association. When we advertise with ICMA, we don't just advertise with ICMA. It goes to other states in terms of their organizations as well. We get a... I'm sorry.
How about the private sector?
The private sector, in terms of like a Wall Street Journal, something like that, we will not advertise in there. We will get response from the private sector. First of all, in terms of candidates that would be responding to us with some private sector experience, first of all, they're looking to move or continue in the public sector. They may have private sector experience, and that is something that's of interest to some of the county commissioners. I can share that with you, and there's no mystery there. And so we'll be looking at private sector experience, along obviously with public sector experience as well. So, but we won't do any specific private sector advertising such as the Wall Street Journal. I've had recruitments, and I'll share this with you, where I've had an elected body saying, well, why don't we advertising in a Wall Street Journal? It's a very expensive piece of advertising, and it's not cost effective. We will get the responses we need with the quality candidates with the advertising we do.
Because at the end of the day, you want to get somebody who's got a good mix, private
Yeah.
and public experience. So trying not to focus just on the private sector, we'll lose out on that public sector. You've been around the block with us, more than once. This is a unique animal, and for somebody to come in, stone cold, no public sector, that's almost dangerous given the regulations and the other hurdles that we got to live under. So we need somebody who's attuned to the uniqueness of what public sector can do.
Except for just building on what Jerry was just talking about, someone who has no public sector experience, it'll be difficult. Nothing's impossible, but it would be difficult to come in as a CEO of an organization, especially the size of this, with no public sector experience and be able to interact and understand what needs to happen. Florida has some, and they're not unique, but Florida has some interesting sunshine laws and public records laws. Being able to interact, understand what he or she can do with the elected body, unless they, and you can't have the county attorney walking around everywhere with your county manager. The county manager is going to have some knowledge when it comes to what he or she can and cannot do. If I'm talking to you as a county commissioner, I sure can't go speak to him as a county commissioner and share with him the conversation you and I had. That's just some plain, simple knowledge in terms of how you could get a couple of county commissioners in trouble by being a conduit. Not intentionally, but being a conduit, you don't want to do that. So public sector knowledge and understanding is critical, being the CEO. We do get a lot of candidates that will come in from the private sector, perhaps as an assistant or maybe a department head, and will, again, aspire to be a city or county manager at a later date, but they have some training underneath. Not that I have anything to do with the price of bread, but that's where I came out of the private sector. My background is finance, but I wanted to be a city manager. But before I got there, I was an assistant finance director, then a finance director, and I worked my way up when I got, anyway.
Well,
That was back when the earth was still cooling, so.
It ought to be easy recruiting because a lot of people like to retire in Florida. So there must be a number of very experienced managers, public sector managers, who would love to come retire in Florida, work here for a few years. And,
Well, Pete, that's true, but I don't think that's what this county wants, is someone that's coming here to retire. I would, and I understand what you're saying. There's someone that says, that they've had 40 years in Wisconsin or Michigan or Illinois or upstate New York or something, and they all of a sudden they're applying in Florida. I'm going to look at a candidate like that very closely. I want to make certain that Brevard County is not paying for their relocation into Florida to retire in another year or two. Yeah. So I'm, as the recruiting, as much as I do in Florida, I know that, and it surfaces real quick. And I'll look for that. Now, that doesn't mean that someone can't come to Florida and say, this is going to be my let's put it this way, my terminal job. Okay, I'm going to be here for the next 10 or 15 years, and I don't want to go anywhere. I want to live and, work in Florida, and my kids all, it's an empty nest now, so it's time. We want to relocate somewhere. All the kids are gone. They're out of school, and so I've got another 15 years, 20 years, I don't know. Again, if someone's foolish as I am, they're going to work forever, so. But you have to understand that, and you have to know what they're looking for. But having someone come here to retire is not what the county wants. You're not going to get that strategic planning, because planning to them is going to be, next year retirement. So, please, sir.
Thank you, WD. My name's Todd Pokriva, Senior Vice President with the Viera Company. We're the master developer of the community of Viera. And I would echo what Peter had to say with respect to a blend of private sector and public sector experience. I think that's very important, especially to have an appreciation of the needs of the county's customers. So, while Brevard County is the 9th largest county in the state of Florida, Brevard County should be striving to be first in terms of responding to the needs of its customers. And I think that blend can help the county manager lead the staff in that direction, so that we can enhance responsiveness in all areas for all customers that the county deals with outside of the county. It's an increasingly competitive environment, and when we're attracting companies to come to our community and create jobs here, for instance, we have to be better at the permitting process than anybody else. We have to look at what some of our counterparts are doing, and if we're doing something more and making it a larger hurdle to jump over, then we're missing out on opportunities. So I think that appreciation for private sector needs when private sector customers are dealing with the county is very important going forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll use myself as an example here. I grew up in an environment, again, like I said, back when Earth was cooling, where you can't fight City Hall. That was the attitude. And I entered the public sector in the 70s, and that has been my mission, always my mission, with each city I work for, is that City Hall's got to be the solution, not the problem. And it was an attitude, and it was an attitude that I conveyed to the employees that I work with, and I think that every public sector entity needs to have that feeling, and you're right. The City Hall, in this case the county government has to be the solution, not the problem. And I think that's what we're looking for, and that's an attitude I'll be looking for in the candidates that I'm going to bring forth and recommend to the county commission for the next county manager. So, would you like to say something, ma'am? I'll come here. I'll come toward you.
Hi, my name is Ann Hicks, and I live in Rockledge, and I have resided here for just about 2 years. Love Brevard County, love all your amenities, but I came from a town that we had a manager, and he left, and they were very wise, and they took advantage of the town clerk, who knew every single pipe, she knew everything. And so we were blessed with her for a period of time, and then when she left, they brought someone in, and he just disrupted, all the employees, to cut budget, et cetera. So, I know he had mentioned looking within, whatever, but I just don't want, as in that case, the gentleman came in, was really a step stool. He left 3 years, later to go on to a bigger community. So I know that you're very wise, and you're going to bring us somebody who's going to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else has something they'd like to say? Yes, sir.
I'm Don Johnston from Titusville, and I'm interested in kind of parlaying what other people have said. The county manager is critical, but certainly the employees are also, in terms of being the county of choice, being good for economic development. And I would think that one of the key criteria in a county manager would be someone that can set and establish goals via the commission, but that they can articulate then and turn into a vision for the county. They're going to get employees excited about what they're doing and where they want to take the organization. So I was just wondering how that plays into the whole search criteria.
The leadership is a critical issue for any position, and certainly here. The county manager has to be a good leader and a good manager and know the difference, because there's clearly a difference there. The leader has to inspire. I sometimes, when I'm talking to aspiring city managers at a city manager conference or something like that. That's right, that's coming up next month. I like to say, when Napoleon said charge, it may have been the last thing he said, but, no one questioned his decision. He charged and he went, and that was it. And you have to have the confidence of your staff, and that the person who's going to be the city manager here has to have that confidence in the staff. Leadership is incredibly important. He or she's got to be able to make decisions and not be afraid to change if there's a mistake made. Any manager that makes a decision and finds out later that he or she has made a mistake and is afraid to change it, that's a mistake in itself. There's nothing wrong with saying, I made a mistake and let's change direction. I'm going to be looking for that in the next. I don't know if there's one way I can say that you find that, but when you're listening to someone, like I mentioned when I was talking to Pete, is that you listen to someone for 1 hour and they say things that come across. They're a people person, or they're not. These things come across, and no one's going to be perfect. I mean, perfection is a journey. It's not a destination. So no one's going to be there, but they're going to be going in that direction. And I like to keep that in mind. And it comes across when you're talking to them and you're listening to them. You have to listen. Somebody that's listening is digesting, not listening long enough to respond with another answer. I like to listen and hear what they have to say, and then be silent and digest what's being said. So I just don't have a simple answer for what you said.
It's your process.
Yeah, it's my process, and that's why when all of this is said and done, I may come to the county commission and say, here are 8 candidates, and in my opinion, any one of these can be your next manager. Let's narrow it down to the ones you want to interview. But I'm also going to give them, or give it to you to share with them any way you want, a jump drive with all 80 or 100 that we have, and they're going to be alphabetical, because some elected officials say, I want to go through all of them. I will probably separate it into those that, in my opinion, didn't meet minimum qualification and those that did, and it'll make it easier for them to go through that. I think once they spend a half hour, an hour, it's going to be, they're going to be tired of looking. But nonetheless, they may see something I didn't see, and I understand that. I'm not perfect at it. I'm going in that direction, but I haven't reached perfection yet. So.
We have made provisions for the board to be able to add candidates to the list after the list is presented. So.
Yeah, and that happens. That's not uncommon. One of the things I ask the county commissioners is that a lot of these candidates, I may have screened them, and for some reason I didn't put them in the mix. It doesn't do anyone any good for me to stand at this podium and talk to them in public some of the negative information I found that I chose not to put them in the list, but I'll share that with them. But I avoid situations where I might embarrass a candidate and there's just no point in it, or they're just not the right one for Brevard County. It doesn't mean that some of the candidates aren't qualified, they're just not the right person for here. You know, a candidate that's going to work good as city manager or county manager in, I'm trying to think of a county in Georgia, they have too many counties, but Gwinnett, yeah. You know, a county manager that's good there may not be good here, so there's no point in me embarrassing that person here for what I would chose as a reason not to move them forward. So, and I'm careful about that. So, sometimes you could ask questions, and I will dance it around as best I can without avoiding any.
Guys, anything else you want to talk about? Otherwise, you're all night.
Would y'all like me to cover the process while you're sitting here? Okay. As I mentioned, I've interviewed for the county commissioners so far, and then we're having the discussion this evening. I'll finish the last commissioner next Monday, I think it's Monday. And by the end of next week, I will finalize that job announcement. The one you're looking at that I had in the backup here is some material I put together to help them along because we've kind of drug this out. You know, this is a bad time of the year to get all of them together for a meeting, so it's taken us several weeks, but that's okay. When I finish with my interviews with them and any input I get from you that needs to get in this announcement, I'll have that in front of them by the end of next week. Once I get approval from them and they say, okay, this draft is acceptable, and it may need to be changes, but when they finally get approval, we will begin advertising immediately. And I would hope that by the end of next week or a few days shortly thereafter, we'll have that. We'll start advertising immediately. It'll go up on our websites. It's already up on the websites now in terms of Brevard County managers coming soon, but I don't have anything more than that up there now.
We're putting this into a brochure format, so
Yeah.
pictures, high-speed color.
There'll be a brochure that follows after that, and then the brochure will replace this document on the website, because the brochure will be more attractive. It'll have the same text that's in there. And the advertising will begin immediately. Most of the advertising, it won't take this 1,100 or 1,200 word document. They'll want, like the Florida Association of Counties, they limit it to 300 words. And typically, I'll scale it down to 300 words, but it'll have the links to the websites where they can go immediately and see all of this. And then I'll get phone calls where candidates want to know certain things before they send in their resume. I've suggested a closing date here of June the 2nd, which will put us about a month out recruiting. I will be screening candidates, again, one-on-one. I spend about an hour with the qualified candidates, all during the process. Typically, it's during the last 10 days to 2 weeks. I don't want to interview heavily a lot of candidates during the first week because a lot of the things that, I'm going to have candidates come in and I'm going to talk to a lot, and I don't want to forget some of the key points. I try to focus on those finalists being within the last 2 weeks that I've spent that time with them. About a week after closing, I'll present the material and recommendations to the county commission. If we follow through the dates, as I mentioned, the 2nd, they would have in their hands the week ending the 9th, probably the 8th or 7th, they'll have the recommended list of semi-finalists. I'll give them about a week to look at the material. If they want to go through the jump drive with all the other candidates, they can do so. And then we need to get together and talk about narrowing that semi-finalist list down to those they want to bring to Brevard County for a face-to-face interview. There's no magic to the number, but it's typically 5 and something like that, 4 or 5, might be 6. They say, gee, we want to interview these. We'll bring them in. At that point in time, we'll do extensive background work. We'll do some background work before we get to there, but some of the stuff we can't do without their written permission. We can't do criminal checks, we can't do credit checks, their driving records, we can't get into that without their written permission. So those that are selected to interview, we would select those, like I said, within 2 weeks after closing. And if it's 5, it'll take 10 days to 2 weeks to run the background on them. And like I said, the background will be credit checks, it'll be driving records, their criminal record, local, county, state, federal, their academic achievements, their past employment. We'll make certain they haven't had any problems, lawsuits against their employer or employer with lawsuits against the employee. Reference checks, I think I mentioned that, the driving records, DMV, we'll do all of that. That material will then all come forth to the county commission before the candidates come to town for an interview. That way, when those candidates get here, we've done the screening and all the extensive background work. There won't be any surprises. There's nothing so disappointing as to go through an interview process with the 5 candidates. They say, oh, this is it, this is the one we want, and all of a sudden there's a real hiccup there, there's a problem. We find that out beforehand. If something comes up with the background work, usually at that level, we don't have it, but occasionally it does occur. Background work will be done. The candidates should be able to come in here and interview. That'll be a couple of weeks after the 9th. Let's say it's a Thursday for a community meet and greet where the staff, the community, the elected officials, whomever might want to come and meet, constitutional officers, obviously the county manager may want to get acquainted with this person. And it would be, finger food and, soft drinks and such as that. And then the next day, the county commission would interview. We haven't decided how they want to do that yet. I've talked a little bit about it with them. A lot of times the elected officials want to have, let's say you have 5 candidates, you got 5 elected officials, they want to do one-on-one with the 5 candidates, rotating, say a half hour each. There may be things that they have questions about in that background, not deal breakers, but things that they want to raise and discuss with the candidate that is best behind closed doors, which they can do that, one-on-one. And then I would anticipate that would be done in the morning, and then the afternoon, the candidate here and the elected body up here asking questions and for the community to watch and observe what's going on. By the end of the day, if all goes well, the county commission could vote and select their new county manager. We would negotiate a contract, when I say we, whether they want me to participate in it, or sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's going to be up to the county commission, however they want to handle it. And then the person would give notice. Yes, sir.
Yeah, when you're interviewing a candidate, do you ask them what has been their most challenging problem that they faced in the, and what was it, and how did they, what was the outcome?
That's a frequently asked question, and a lot of times that's one. Yes, sir. I want to know, especially a position such as this, one of the questions I'll ask is that, this is a very political position, or a lot of political influence in this position. And from, you've made a recommendation and it resulted in a political problem. How did you handle it? And I want to hear what they have to say. There's no real solution or no real correct answer to that. It's more like, how did they handle it? What did they do? In terms of challenging, you've dealt with a sensitive issue when it comes to a development, perhaps, in the community. And you've went to a community meeting where there's this side and there's that side. We want it, we don't. And, how did you handle that? And, it's a challenge, and I want to know what they did. What was the outcome? Not only how you handled it, what was the resolution?
What's your weight on the candidate's knowledge of the problems and opportunities for Brevard County?
Oh, yes, sir. Believe me, that's very important. I'm in Volusia County. My office, my home is in Daytona Beach Shores. It was in Pinellas County up to a year ago. But aside from that, what do you know about Brevard County? When I'm talking to them in the screening process, I expect the candidate to know an awful lot about Brevard County. I want them to know, the ideal county manager here is going to be someone that has lived and worked in a coastal community in Florida. That would be the ideal situation. Now, that doesn't exclude someone else that's lived and worked in a coastal community in Galveston, Texas. That may be as well. But I would like to see, here it is, the candidate's going to come on board in June and July, and guess what happens every year in June and July in Florida? If nothing else, there's a threat of something, big and ferocious coming ashore. They need to be prepared for that. They need to understand that. I would like to talk to a candidate that, my background is finance, so I lean towards somebody with some financial know-how, and they're not afraid to get into the budget, and they're very comfortable in fiscal matters. But on the other hand, I would like to hear a candidate, for all those that might be listening tonight. So, what's the first thing you're going to do? Well, considering it's June, I'd like to take a look at what the disaster preparedness plan is for Brevard County. That's a good thing to start with, because, your EOC is going to be here in Brevard County. You're the center of attention if something comes ashore, a hurricane comes ashore, and how you're going to interact with the other communities. So, understanding your disaster preparedness plan is a key issue in this state, especially for a coastal community. And that doesn't necessarily exclude others, because Orlando's been hit, Gainesville's been hit. Let's face it, anywhere in Florida, there's always a potential. So knowing Brevard County, knowing the issues that Brevard County is going to face, and not just the general issues because of the coastal, but what's here in Brevard County. Good grief, look, you got the, Space Coast is named after what we're looking at, the Kennedy Space Center right there. So understanding that the industry that's here, what was here, what perhaps can come back, they need to know that, and they need to have a good feel for that.
How do you vet the performance of someone who has been in management in terms of contract management, in terms of ethics, in terms of, I mean, how do you find out really what this person has been all about?
In terms of ethics, one of the things I'll look for is someone that has an active membership in ICMA and their state organization. Florida is the Florida City County Managers Association. They must maintain a certain level of ethics. And if they don't, they get called on it. And if it's bad, they're suspended and they don't get to come back. That's one thing. And how do they deal with contracts? Is that what your question? A lot of that information is going to come out in, first of all, in terms of managing contracts, the social media that we have access to and we can get to, the newspaper, and the gentleman sitting in the back there, I'm sure he's here. If you want to get some information, at least it gets you started on going after some issues that may be of issue that the county commission wants to know about. How did they handle contracts? Was it bad? Was it good? Did they leave a city because of a poor negotiation or handling something poorly or inappropriate? Not just handling it poorly, but was it inappropriate? It's who you know, and we have a lot of resources, and it just depends on the candidate and where they're coming from. I, for one, have been in Florida since 1984, and I've been active in the Florida League of Cities ever since. I guess the good news, I've been here since '84. The bad news, I've been here since '84. A lot of people know me, and most know me, and I know a lot of them. So that's one of the reasons I do what I do. I have resources and I have contacts and I know who to speak with. if you have your relationships, you can get information on someone. I'm going to have candidates that come here that have been places. I can pick up the phone and call elected officials that they've worked for or other managers that they've worked with or around, and I don't hesitate to do that. I don't look to anybody else to do that. I do that. Because when those candidates come here, and or I sit down with the county commission and I talk to them about these are the 8 candidates I think can manage your county, they're not going to say, oh, that's fine, let's take 5 and move forward. They're going to have some questions of me, and I need to be able to answer those questions. I like to know that I can answer all their questions. Ideally, I would. Realistically, I can't answer all of their questions, but I can answer almost all of their questions because I've spent the time finding out about these candidates. I've spent the time. I don't have somebody else doing it. I do it. So.
I don't mean to take all this, but I'm curious, when you bid on a contract or if you're a client of the county, what are the things that you look for in terms of, a fair assessment, a fair bid, a good, bid summary so that you know exactly, the process, the procedure, and the evaluations are all consistent regardless of who you are?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of,
Right. No, that's exactly right. Fair and consistent application, and time is very important. Going back to my original comments, that there's an appreciation for, the customer's needs, and time is important, to a developer. Time's important to other customers of the county and in other departments that they're dealing with. So it's creating a culture from the top down with the staff that there's a need for heightened levels of responsiveness, attention to the needs of the customers, and increased competitiveness with those other jurisdictions around us that are going to have the opportunities if we don't up our game.
This is one of the issues that comes back to the private sector versus the public sector. You're doing development in the public sector. It's a whole different ballgame than in the private sector where you're dealing with perhaps one person that's the decision maker. You may be dealing with a county manager here. Well, that county manager needs to know what he or she can do with or without the assistance or direction from the county commission and the county attorney. It's a whole different ballgame. And if he or she doesn't handle your project properly, it's going to be a nightmare for you because you're never going to get it done. It has to go through the process. And let's face it, there's a public sector here. We're dealing with public funds in the public environment, and it has to be done properly in the public view, or else it's just not going to happen, and you're not going to be happy. So that's the county manager needs to be able to do that and know how to do that. If a county manager is going to come forth and work with you on a deal and it's beyond his or her authority, that's not going to help you at all. And it's going to perhaps destroy your project or certainly delay it, if you will. And that would be in the best case scenario.
well, Brevard is a great county. We have really skilled and experienced county employees, and sometimes I think they're not well taken care of, sometimes. And that is a budgetary problem.
Some of my employees I lost to Brevard County years ago, so I know.
So
Also took some
there are
away.
great opportunities here. It's a great place to establish.
This will be, I'm very confident we're going to have a very successful recruitment here because it's, I wanted this project. It's something I'm going to be very proud to be a success here. because it's, Brevard County it's a big county. It's a great place to be. We're going to get a good candidate here, and it's your my next door neighbor too. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate the time you spent with us tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to be here another half hour just to keep the doors open and see if we get any late arrivals, so. You guys are free to hang with us as long as you like. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey, Jerry. Appreciate it. Todd Booker.
Pleasure meeting you, Pete.
Nice meeting you.
I was standing with Andy Holmes in the hallway one day. Oh, yeah. Yeah, outside Commissioner Smith's office.
All right. Okay, Peter? All good? Pleasure. Always.
Pleasure seeing you.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Hunsaker over in Manatee County. And he was in Hillsborough, and he was in Osceola. So the county commission there has said that they're not going to renew his contract, which is up the end of this year. They're starting a search for a new manager. I don't know whether that's talked or not, but I just wanted to throw that out.
I was not aware of that. I know Ed. I don't know him that well, but I did, as you mentioned name. I did. I'm trying to remember when I heard about that. Well, first of all, if he's interested, I'm going to hear from him. So,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
not, I'll contact him. So I just need to find out something.
Yeah, no, I know he did a good job over
Yeah.
there. And he came in when Ernie Patton was the county administrator in Manatee, and he retired. So Ed moved over at that time from Osceola.
See, I was, Manatee, they just sent out an RFP. I didn't respond. I had the baby then. It was, they wanted financial information on our organization, and they wanted to be able to audit our books. I said, that's just not gonna happen. I mean, some of the stuff was proprietary. And there were certain things I would do, but we've done 2 recruitments for them in the past. And I submitted that to them, and the question, is this gonna be, required? Why now all of a sudden? And I never got a response, so I didn't respond to it. Well, I wasn't gonna mention. What is it? I'm trying to think why.
I know he went in to stay. It was a 4-3 vote on the
Yeah.
commission not to renew his contract.
Yeah.
And they have some new commissioners that flexing their muscles.
Yeah, I don't know where they are, but it was regarding this, it was, in my opinion, an overzealous purchasing agent that put together the RFP. I mean, I get requests for proposals, sometimes it's a 1-paragraph email. Other times, it's a 75-page legal document with 15, 18 notarized attachments. They get the same response. I mean, we do this job a lot.
Yeah.
Nationwide, and have been for this corporation for 27 years. And it really doesn't matter how you write the RFP. We're going to get you that same candidate. We're going to do the same recruitment that we did. Now, sometimes it's the attorney, it's the purchasing agent, all this thing, all that, they want a whole bunch of things. And I look at some of those things sometimes, things like, or they want original and 12 copies and a jump drive with a PDF in there. Well, I do all of that stuff. But again, some of them are, we'd like an RFP for a recruitment of a city manager for the city of Jupiter. And you can send it to me as an email. Look what we did in 5 years. The Alaska Highway was built in 18 months. It's the same. I can't tell them how to change things, but I'm going to tell you one thing. It makes me reflect back on when I was city manager And I was so insistent that make it easy for people to do business with us. But there's just so much that goes on, you can't get your hands on all of it. There's just constant. And I think about that sometimes, and think, I just wonder how many people we ran away that wanted to do business with us because we were jerks.
Yeah.
And it just happens all the
No,
time.
and that's what I think is, how many opportunities do we miss that we don't even know about?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I know. It's unbelievable. It's just absolutely. I've got something today. I'm sitting in a parking lot at the commissioner's office, waiting to go into it. And I look and I get a request for a proposal from Okaloosa County for their Tourist Development Department Director. They issued it today. Tomorrow is the deadline for questions, and it has to be in their office Monday, the 21st.
Wow.
And I think, are you kidding me? And they talk about the address where it's going to be delivered, and then at the end it says, you can send the email attachment to me. Well, I'll do that over the weekend. Now, I don't really want to do anything in Okaloosa County because that's Crestview. I mean, it's like working in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I have, for something like that, what I would bid for a department head there would be more than I would charge Brevard County to do this job.
Yeah.
Because I know what it costs to do the report, and I underbid everybody. I like what I'm doing. But I know that in Crestview, I can't get there except by Silver Arrow.
Yeah.
And that's a nightmare. So I would crank in probably another $2,000 just to go there.
Yeah.
I did the Virgin Islands, November, December last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their public housing, they had 15,000 units, 15,000. More people live in public housing, I think, than live anywhere else over there. Well, they needed a director of asset management, person who likes all that. And so they, one of the proposals for me, Jim Mercer said, "Do you want to do this?" I said, I haven't done anything. What am I going to do? He said, I said, okay, I'll see you. But I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
How am I going to get over there? I got to go to Miami to get a direct flight. I can't afford to fly out of Daytona. Daytona, I'll end up going to Charlotte, then to Miami, then it's bizarre. So I up for my fee 50%, and I sent it to them in an executive summary. I didn't even do a proposal. And they, within a half hour, I got it back, and they had a purchase order attached to it.
Wow.
So I ended up doing it. It was, people said, "Oh, wow, that's wonderful." I said, "Let me tell you something. It's not a vacation. It doesn't matter." I went to Miami. I get on a plane. I fly there. Someone picked me up at the airport. I went to a meeting. I stayed in a hotel. Never, I looked outside. Ooh, there's a beach. And that's as close as I got to it. And in the morning, I got on a plane and came back. So,
That the barrier to business development
it wasn't a vacation.
is the incentives that they have.
Yeah, it's just.
If they didn't have them to begin with, there wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And I was overseeing due diligence or acquisition entitlements. Went to Sedona, but it was, flew to Denver, backwards, went to Phoenix, drove up to Sedona, went to the city council hearing, got my approval, went to bed, got up the next morning, drove back. It's like, I saw Red Rock in the morning, when I was getting in my car, but that was it.
Yeah, I know. It's just, even my wife, because she did more salary than I did. So she said, well, we could go with us. Okay, let's see what was Denver. It was Denver inside. I wanted to get over there and get the hell out. I wasn't there. And I'm not going to do anything by myself. I'm going to do anything because my wife's going to be there. But, if you go there and you're on a cruise ship, all the shops are open. Well, if there's no cruise ships around, there's nothing. I mean, you can't even get a decent drink. You know, I went to the bar and I wanted a Hendrix Martini. The guy didn't know what Hendrix was. Really, and I'll never forget, I was asking him, he had Bombay Sapphire, so I settled for that. But I asked him, I said, do you have any single malt scotch? And he kind of stood there and looked at me, he says, what is it? And I thought, all right, that's okay. And I said, no, never mind. That's when I decided to have a martini. So I was sitting there at the bar, and I'm looking, I said, wait a minute, there's a 15-year Glenlivet sitting up there, I can see it. It was only one bottle, I don't know why they would have that. If anything, they'd have a 12-year, because they pour that to 15, it's not real expensive, it's a little more expensive. And I told the guy, I said, that's a single malt right there. So he goes, he said, oh, I said, he said, you want this? You don't want coffee with a martini? I said, but I'm just going to tell you, that's a single malt. Yeah. But it was, you know, there was nothing there. There was nothing I wanted to see and nothing I wanted to do. It was a place I wanted to go eat. Yeah. Just the cruise ships on end, there's nothing. And I wasn't going to walk around that place at night. Been to too many places like that, and, you know, I don't carry a lot of money, but they don't know that. Right. They want it, they're gonna get what I have. So, anyway. But Chris, I'll send it to them, but if they want, I guess I could probably find it. Okaloosa County,
You don't need the two senators in Virginia.
Thank you, I appreciate you. Well, thank you so much, yeah, I'm glad you came.
Or George or somewhere else. Because that's,
Places full, there's only 2 or 4 people out there.
spread this. Not because it's good economics.
Nothing else I can do all the talking.
Yeah. No, it was good. You had a couple.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I started, I was from New Orleans. That's where Campfire City Hall, believe it is. You walked into City Hall in those days. When somebody got elected, when they got elected, in came all his minions. And I'll never forget, they all sat around, they had hats on. And it was a time that and they had a plaid shirt with a tie, you know, it just seemed to fit, and dress pants and white socks. That was typical City Hall employee. And they sat behind a gray steel desk and read the newspaper all damn day. And they didn't do anything. They were just getting paid. I mean, that was New Orleans. That was Louisiana politics. Believe me, that hadn't changed a great deal. And you couldn't fight City Hall. And when Reagan tried to unseat Gerald Ford, I went to California to work on his campaign. And he was not successful. And I ended up going to work as the assistant finance director of Redwood City. I said, I'm going to work in the public sector. And I ran for school board in Louisiana, got my ass whipped big time because I was a Republican. And so I went there and I got the job as assistant finance director. And I said, you know what, I want to be a city manager. And so assistant finance director there, then I went to Bakersfield as the finance director, finance operations manager. Then I became the assistant city manager over finance. I was there 6 years, and I was ready to be a city manager. And I interviewed in Glendale, where the Escobar is now. I interviewed in Phoenix. They offered me the job in Phoenix for the finance director, but they didn't want to pay me enough, so I didn't take it. And on my way from Phoenix back to Bakersfield, which is where I was, it's funny, I'd go to Redwood City, I mailed my resume to Gainesville for city manager. And I became city manager in Gainesville here in Florida in 1984. I've been here ever since. But I've been city manager in Gainesville. After 5 years, I said, I'm done. I was burned out. And I went to work for the Regional Planning Council to finish out a grant for those. 6 months, I stayed there 8 years. Governor Bush appointed me to the Economic Development Committees and the Tourism Advisory Committee, and we were the poster child for economic development in the state of Florida for the state, for the feds. Economic Development Office in Atlanta and Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. We, what everybody was, they were trying to get everybody to do what we were doing with grants and economic development. That's what I did. And my wife died. You didn't ask all this. My wife died, and I went to travel around Mexico, and my kids, man, people steal your money. You don't speak Spanish. Anyway, nothing happened. In Melbourne Beach, right here.
Okay, great.
And that was in '84 and '85 with the hurricanes. And I met my wife today. I'm married today. Since then, we've been, married. We got married a year later. And I went to Surfside as town manager, and I was here for 2 years. And because she was there, her nanny. So I decided to go down there. Well, I was buy her a condo, fly back and forth from Fort Lauderdale. I ended up getting a job down there. I was there for 2 years, and I went to Iraq. ICMA sent me to Iraq and recruited me to teach transparency in government. And I had a year contract. I was there 6 months because everything went to hell in a handbasket, and I was a real target. And I came back and went to Madeira Beach and was there for 3 years, and that was 6 years ago. I said, screw it, I'm going to recruit.
When was it you were in Surfside?
2006 and 7, all of 6 and all of 7. Yeah. And I left in December of 2007 to go to Iraq. I had to be there before New Year's Day. So that's the third war I've been in. Yeah. And I've been a contractor